Chapter 23, Pot Hunting and Hunting Methods. For the procurement of such meat as your country affords, you need suitable tools. For big game, an adequate rifle; for lesser prey, a shotgun, a small game rifle, or a handgun. The more efficient these weapons are, and the more skilled in their use you have made yourself, the better will be your chance of obtaining pot meat. You should also know where to look for your meat and the best ways of bringing it to bag. So let us get together and discuss these matters in this chapter. First, let us consider your weapons. The big game rifle. On no piece of equipment I know of has more been written than on the big game rifle. The discussion has been endless, much of it among authors who have never shot anything larger than a small deer in a forest close to civilization. There are just two phases of the subject about which I would like to talk to you. The first is the killing power of the cartridge. The second is the refinements of the weapon that will help you make sure and humane kills, preferably with one shot. No bullet, no matter how large in diameter, how heavy, or how high in velocity it is fired at, can be depended on to kill big game reliably and swiftly unless it strikes in the vital part of the anatomy. This means the brain, the spinal column, or the center of the animal's blood supply, the heart, the large arteries around the heart, and the lungs. The brain and spinal column present too small targets for anyone to be sure of hitting except under unusual circumstances. The chest, containing the heart and lungs, presents the largest mark. A modern bullet at modern velocities penetrating into this boiler room disrupts so much tissue and so fills the cavity with blood that the animal either succumbs on the spot or drops after a wild race of perhaps 25 to 100 yards as soon as the supply of blood to the brain ceases. This critical area is not a difficult target. Any hunter who can not be fairly sure of striking it with the majority of his shots has no moral right to hunt with the rifle, for he will cause too much suffering. For such sure killing, all that is necessary is a cartridge having a bullet of such weight and construction that at the velocity at which it is made to fire, it will smash through the heaviest shoulder blades and ribs surrounding the chest cavity and penetrate within. The minimum bullet that will do this on all species of American big game up to about 200 yards is a soft-point jacketed bullet of 25 caliber, weighing at least 117 grains and fired at a muzzle velocity of at least 2,700 feet per second. As the weight of the bullet goes up, a proportionately lower velocity will still assure the same smash and energy. The minimum is therefore, roughly speaking, the .257 Roberts, the .300 Savage, and the .35 Remington cartridges. With heavier cartridges, be sure that the recoil of the weapon does not preclude nail-driving marksmanship on your part. A properly constructed 30 caliber bullet of 180 grains at muzzle velocity 2,700 feet per second, a .30-06 U.S. cartridge, is adequate for any American big game if properly directioned at the chest cavity, but not even it, nor anything larger, is sure unless accurately aimed. American standard big game rifles are almost invariably equipped with an open rear sight and a bead front sight, both of the vintage of about 1730. Such sights are totally inadequate for the kind of shooting I trust the wilderness-loving sportsman will care to settle for. I have been coaching thousands of men in rifle marksmanship all my life, but I confess I cannot teach anyone to shoot well with a rifle fitted with such obsolete sights. Of course, you can knock down a deer at 50 yards or a woodchuck at 50 feet if that is all you require, but in the open and in the woods the alignment of such sights is so affected by light and shadow as to cause prohibitive errors at longer distances. Moreover, in the hurry and the more or less excitement of shooting at game, scarcely anyone can depend on himself to make the careful alignment necessary with such sights. The common result is overshooting. Such open sights should always be removed from any rifle you purchase. The rear one should be replaced with a lineman type, a large peep in a small disc, adjustable rear sight. We think the best hunting front sight is the Redfield flat top sourdough. For the way to aim these sights, see any of the better manuals on rifle marksmanship. Such sights can be seen more clearly in poor light than can any other metallic sights. A few days of their use, aimed correctly, will result in much more accurate hitting ability. In the hands of a fair marksman, a lever or pump action rifle is capable of sure shots on big game up to some 150 yards, and the better bolt action rifles on out to about 250 yards. So sighted, the old 30-30 Winchester and 250 3000 Savage rifles make fine weapons for deer in wooded country. The experienced hunter rifleman of today demands a more specialized rifle that will respond to his skill in marksmanship. At the same time, it must be simple and rugged enough for wilderness use. The past 15 years have seen big strides in the development of such rifles. A bolt-action rifle of better grade is the Winchester Model 70, weighing about 8.5 pounds and chambered for the 270 Winchester or 30-06 U.S. cartridge. Such a firearm should have a well-fitting and properly bedded stock, a shooting gun sling, and a single-stage trigger pulling off at between 3 and 4 pounds pressure without creep or backlash. It is best sighted with a 4-power modern hunting telescope sight with a field of view at least 30 feet at 100 yards. By taking full advantage of its latent capabilities, an efficient hunter can make sure hits in the boiler room on big game out to about 350 yards. This is the artist's weapon. No rifle can be properly sighted at the factory or by a gunsmith except by sheer luck. You must sight it in yourself, both for your way of holding and aiming, and for the ammunition you will use in the woods. Until this has been done, you can place no reliance whatever on your weapon. The task should be taken care of before your trip, and it should be verified several times. Rifles shooting cartridges having a muzzle velocity of 2,500 to 3,000 feet per second should have their sights adjusted to strike the point of aim at 200 yards. They will then not overshoot more than 3 inches at 100 yards. By accurately aiming just a trifle high at 300 or at the top edge of a large animal at 350, you can be sure of a good hit. Pot hunting. The full-charged factory cartridge will blow small edible game and fur bearers all to smithereens if the bullet strikes in the body. Throughout the wilder parts of the United States and Canada, grouse are not particularly alarmed by human beings. It is common to come on them strutting or dusting on the ground, or to have them fly up onto a lower branch of a tree and offer a standing shot at 10 to 15 yards. You can then decapitate them with your rifle if you know exactly where the bullet will travel with relation to the point of aim at these short distances. Usually it strikes an inch to half an inch low. But the full charge cartridge releases a lot of noise to echo around the game country, and it is rather like using a sledgehammer to drive a carpet tack. Such cartridges are not particularly good getters of such pot meats. The all-around rifle. Most of you, I imagine, would not care to be burdened with more than one rifle or gun in the woods. In many localities, it is preferable to have a weapon well suited to both large and small game. Such an all-around rifle is the king of weapons for the chronic wilderness lover and loafer. It is based on a 25 to 30 caliber rifle, adapted to use both a light load for small game as well as the standard big game factory load. This adaptation should not detract in one iota from its effectiveness on large animals. The small load should be adequate for all game from quail and squirrels to turkey and beaver, killing neatly but having no more destructive effect than the 22 long rifle cartridge. The best light loads are based on the use of the lighter jacketed bullets with sharp points. Muzzle velocity should not be greater than about 1,600 feet per second. Such a bullet will not expand at this low velocity, passing through the body of a grouse or a weasel. It will neither destroy too much edible meat nor ruin a trophy skin. For 40 years I have used such a load in my 30-06 rifle with the greatest satisfaction. It consists of the 150 grain full jacketed pointed the M11 service bullet with a powder charge of 18 grains of DuPont number 4759 powder. Even better loads are the 25 caliber 87 grain and the 270 caliber 110 grain bullets with slightly lighter charges of the same powder. These loads have slight disadvantages. They give a little louder report than it is desirable to let loose in a terrain where your anticipated and wished for trophy is a big game animal. They require a different adjustment of the sights from that needed for the big game load, so that you have to shift both cartridge and sights. Finally, these reduced loads cannot be bought on the market. You must hand load them yourself or have a custom hand loader make them up for you. Hand loading ammunition, however, is a most interesting hobby. For some years now, my favorite all-around rifle and my constant field has been a bolt-action rifle of 9 pounds weight, chambered for the 270 Winchester centerfire cartridge, and sighted with a 4-power Bear Cub scope. For big game, either the 150 grain Sierra Boattail bullet or the 150 grain Sierra Sharp Point bullet loaded to a muzzle velocity of 3,000 feet a second is used. With the elevation dial of the scope set at 2 minutes, this load shoots to the point of aim at 200 yards. At 100 yards, it strikes 2 inches above aim. At 300 yards, it drops about 6 inches, and it is about a foot low at 350 yards. The small game load is the 110 grain Sierra pointed soft point bullet with a charge of 16 grains of 4759 powder. With the reticule dial on the Bear Cub scope set at 7 minutes, the bullet strikes 3/10 of an inch below aim at 25 yards, 1 inch above aim at 50 yards, and 3/4 of an inch above at 100 yards. At this latter distance, a 5-shot group will be in about 1.5 to 1 3/4 inches. The report is quite light and the recoil nil. The shotgun. If you care nothing for big game or are in a country it does not frequent, then the shotgun should be considered for the procurement of small pot meat. It is the most effective on all birds and on most small game when a size of shot suitable for that particular game is used up to its sure killing range of about 40 yards for 20, 16, and 12 gauge guns. The 410 bore has a maximum killing range of about 30 yards. With a rifled slug, a single barrel gun of 12 gauge is also quite effective on deer up to about 50 yards. You must equip it with adjustable rifle sights, however, to make sure hits. The drawbacks of the shotgun are only its loud report and the rather heavy weight and large bulk of its shells. An expensive shotgun is not at all necessary for pot hunting. Way back in 1930, the sales manager of the Stevens Arms Company sent me a common single-barrel gun. He wrote me, "Don't think I am giving you a valuable present and thus putting you under any obligation. This gun retails at $15, and it costs us less than half of that amount to make it. But I would like you to try it in comparison with the finest British shotguns costing around $1,000. I think you will find that it will pattern just as well, and we think here it will prove just as durable and stay tight just as long." After having used this little light, cheap, single-barrel piece for 25 years on countless trips afield as a pot gun, I will be darned if he was not right. The small game rifle. From many viewpoints, the little light and inexpensive lever pump or bolt-action rifle using the .22 long rifle high-velocity cartridge is the most convenient gatherer of small pot meat. The ammunition is light and inexpensive. The report is not apt to disturb big game 300 or more yards away. It kills neatly, even on the larger small game, such as turkey. The high-velocity cartridge with hollow point bullets perform quite well. It is the logical weapon for eastern Canada, where about the only pot meat is grouse and muskrat, the latter being most decidedly edible and where handguns are not in general prohibited. This should have the same metallic sights as those suggested for the big game rifle. Using the .22 long rifle high-velocity cartridge with sights adjusted to strike point of aim at 75 yards, either a solid or hollow point bullet hits 1 inch high at 40 yards, 1 inch low at 85, and 3.5 inches low at 100 yards. With such a rifle, you can also have a lot of fun safely plinking around camp. Practice with it is the least expensive way of arriving at a high degree of skill in marksmanship. Everyone should own a 22. The handgun. The most practical answer for a multitude of outdoorsmen is the light, high-grade 22 caliber pistol or revolver. It is conveniently and easily carried at all times, even while hunting with the big game rifle. Besides furnishing you with pot meat, it will account for varmints, including poisonous snakes. It can be used for securing large fish not protected by law. It is also ideal for the casual plinker. The 22 long rifle cartridge, particularly the high-speed type, has excellent killing effect on birds and small animals. The report is not too loud. The ammunition expense is insignificant. The best models for such use are the lightweight pistols and revolvers with adjustable target sights. The short 4.5-inch barrel is slightly preferable to the 6-inch barrel. The 32 Smith & Wesson long and the 38 special cartridges with round nose bullets and standard velocities will not damage too much meat, but they are noisy and rather expensive. Before 1910, there were no full-size 22 revolvers made. Phil B. Beckart of San Francisco dealer had confidence in the future of such a handgun. He gave Smith & Wesson an order for 1,000 of them, and in 1910 they produced what has since been known as their 22-32 target revolver. That year, Hartley and Graham in New York got a hold of one of these, and I immediately bought it. Several years later, this handgun won for me the aggregate of all the pistol matches at the annual outing at the Campfire Club. In 1912, I took it along on a 2-month hunting trip in the primitive area at the head of the South Fork of the Flathead River in Montana. I carried it all the time while hunting, fishing, and even when I went to a stream for water. On that trip, I shot exactly 40 grouse with it, and we ate them all. I have this little revolver still. It has gone on almost every trip I have made in the United States since those early days, has brought a large amount of small game to our table, and has given me a world of pleasure. If I were selecting a new handgun for pot hunting today, however, I believe I would choose one of the lighter auto-loading pistols with a 4.5-inch barrel, target sights, and grip with thumb rest. This I would do mainly because it would be lighter, smaller, easier to care for. Such weapons, too, have much better hand-fitting grips than any standard revolver. I regard adjustable target sights as being absolutely necessary on such a weapon, and indeed for any handgun that is to be interesting and satisfying to shoot. To kill small game neatly and surely, you must hit it in a vital spot. Just as in target shooting, you must hit close to the 10 ring a 9 at least. Each make of ammunition will shoot to a slightly different spot. Likewise, any difference in the manner and tension with which the handgun is held will cause it to center its bullets differently. If the pistol is to hit close to where it is aimed, it must be possible to adjust the sights according to the ammunition and the manner of grasping the gun. Carrying the pistol. Look up the laws regarding the carrying of a pistol before you take one anywhere. Throughout most of the United States, it is perfectly legal to carry one provided it is not concealed. In New York State, however, even the owning of a pistol is practically prohibited, and a license to possess one is extremely difficult to obtain. In Canada, too, the possession and use of handguns is to a large extent restricted. The best way to carry a pistol is in a stout leather holster. This should have a flap. At first I had an open Mexican holster for my 22, but one day I almost lost it when I tripped and the pistol fell out. My collaborator actually did lose a prized one of his in the East when inching along at full length across some frozen beaver ponds at twilight. A flap also does a lot to protect the gun from dirt and rain. Carry the holster on a rather wide belt, worn low down on the hips, not tight around the waist. You can also stick it in your rucksack or pack sack. Take plenty of ammunition, at least 1,000 rounds for a 2-week trip. You won't need anything like that much for pot shooting, but you are sure to do a lot of plinking, which is lots of fun, particularly on rainy days, and good for your marksmanship. Learning to hit. You should not kid yourself about pistol shooting. Until you have made yourself into a fair pistol shot, it'll be an absolute useless weapon to you. Almost all American males think that they inherit an ability to shoot well with a pistol or revolver, due probably to their romantic reading when kids. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you have never before shot a handgun, All you have to do to cure yourself of this notion is to go out, put up a kind of a target, and start to shoot at it. You will find that literally you cannot hit the barn. Moreover, the more undirected practicing you do, the worse you will shoot. Good pistol shots are made, not born. You can make yourself into a good shot, but you have to start the right way, and it is going to take a little time. You don't necessarily need a coach to teach you. If you can understand and apply what you read, then a good manual will do to guide your practice. One of the best is Pistol Marksmanship, available for 75 cents from the NRA Book Service, 1600 Rhode Island Avenue, Northwest Washington, 6, D.C. But for a starter, let me give you a hint here. You cannot hold a pistol steady at first. No one can. If you attempt to aim at a target, you will find your sights trembling all over a 3-foot circle at 50 feet. If during this wobbling you attempt to pull the trigger, when for a fleeting instant the sight seems to be directed towards the mark, there will be no use in going up to the target to see where the bullet hole is. That would be like going and swimming after a hearty meal. You won't find it there. When you first get your pistol, there is no use in hustling out to a range to see how it shoots. That would be a sure waste of time and ammunition, and besides, it has ruined a lot of morales. Instead, practice in your home, holding your empty pistol in the right position at arm's length and aiming at some small mark. You will find that you quiver all over the landscape. But keep it up. Practice for 5 to 10 minutes 3 or 4 times a day, attempting merely to hold the pistol steady. In just 3 or 4 days, a tremor, which at first covered a 3-foot circle at 50 feet, will have been reduced to something like an 8 or 10-inch variation. Then it is time to think about that trigger. While you are trembling all over this reduced area, without letting up a bit in your effort to hold still, start placing pressure on the trigger. Continue with a very slow and gradually increasing pressure until the hammer falls quite unexpectedly. Now you are going to find your hypothetical bullet somewhere within the radius of your tremor, fairly close to the bullseye, which is considerably better than not hitting the whole barn. With continued practice of this sort, day after day in your home, dry shooting without ammunition, you will get better and better, but your squeeze on the trigger must be so gradual, building ounce by ounce while you endeavor to hold still, that you never know when the hammer will fall. Every time you try to pull the trigger when the sights appear to be aimed right, you are probably going to miss the whole darn target. At the start, it will likely take you at least 10 seconds of this gradually growing compression. That's all right. The finest revolver shots in the world average about 3 seconds to squeeze the trigger in slow fire. The hammer must fall unexpectedly. Before very long, it will do just that while your sights are trembling over a mark the size of a grouse. Then it is time to step outdoors with ammunition. There is one more lesson to be learned from this master pistol shooter. He does 10 times as much dry shooting at home as he does firing on the range with ammunition, and he continues it all the time. It is the most necessary and valuable practice always. It costs you nothing but a few minutes daily. But get that manual, study it, and apply it. It's a very good side note. It's a very good idea to get what are referred to as snap caps, so you avoid any possibility of damaging your revolver. Use them especially on on 22 caliber weapons of all makes and styles. Where and how to hunt. In a country that is known to contain a certain species of game, you won't locate it everywhere. There will be large sections, in fact, where you will never see it at all. Wild game is just like the human species. It is concerned mainly with food, shelter, and sleep at appropriate times. It will be found where these can be obtained. Birds take to roost at night, but during the day they do not hesitate to go where the food is, for their flight enables them to escape their enemies. Mammals, except in rare areas where they are undisturbed and where there are no predators, tend to feed at night, where they can escape observation, and during the day to lie hidden in some safe retreat. It is entirely unproductive to hunt in places where no self-respecting wild game ever ventures. One way to find out where to go is to ask local residents where they see game and to concentrate thereabouts. Lacking that information, you may study the habits of game one way or another to determine the sort of habitat in which each is likely to be. Beaver and muskrats will be found only where there are ponds and streams. Woodchucks are not travelers, or roamers and will be seen only where there is succulent grass. Their burrows will be close at hand. Squirrels live only where there are nuts and masts. Rabbits only where green vegetation abounds. Sheep, goats, and to a large extent caribou are animals of the high open places. They prefer high meadows where their wonderful eyesight will warn them if any of any nearing danger. Moose are very partial to certain foods, mainly willows, and will be found mostly in low and wet places where such succulencies occur. When not feeding, they bed down in thickets adjacent to such areas, a favorite resting place being near the top of a largely open slope where they cannot be approached unawares and where they can trot away in either direction. Deer are browsers, not grazers, and their food is small bushes, leaves, plants, and shrubs. They feed where there are and in the middle of the day bed down also in nearby thickets. Tracks and tracking. Besides looking in the right kind of country for the game you want, search for any signs indicating its presence. If you come upon reasonably fresh tracks in fair numbers, there is a locality that can be profitably hunted. Each species of animal leaves its distinctive mark on ground that is favorable for an impression, and it is generally easy to distinguish the mark of one species from another. Unless you are a woodsman of long experience, you probably will not notice tracks unless they are made on a more or less bare and fairly soft piece of ground, rather free of leaves, grass, and moss. Of course, you are interested only in fairly recent tracks, those made within a couple of weeks. A track newly made on soft and more or less moist loam usually appears clear and distinct, with sharp outlines and edges. As soon as the imprint has been made, it begins to get dull and to be more or less obliterated from the effect of sun, wind, and insects crawling over it. Its precise edges become blunt, perhaps, and crumble. It dries. Dew or raindrops mark it. Dust may blow into it. Before many days, it disappears. Sometimes, however, a very old track may look perfectly fresh and fool you momentarily. I remember several acres of ground on the edge of a park in the Montana Rockies so tracked up by elk that it looked like a barnyard. Each impression was distinct with sharply defined edges, but those tracks were made in a gumbo soil that had been wet at the time, and the impressions were preserved as though they had been pressed in wax. I examined them in September. The elk that had left those tracks had done so in the early spring, and now they were high up in the mountains near timberline. Tracks made in snow, particularly fresh snow, will be perfectly apparent to anyone. Some of them, however, may appear only like holes made by snow spilled from the branches. You have to go along them a little way sometimes to find a clear-cut impression at the bottom, which will show what animal passed that way. If it is storming at the time, the amount of loose, fresh snowflakes in such tracks can inform you approximately how old they are. The snow on a perfectly fresh deer track may also be soft if the thermometer is below freezing. However, it will be glazed over with a crust. It is comparatively easy to follow a fresh trail in the snow for a long distance if you are tracking the animal with a view of getting a shot at it. You must be particularly alert and noiseless. You must keep watching ahead and not have your eyes continually on the track. Take heed of the wind too. If it is at your back, instead of following the trail directly, proceed parallel to it about 100 yards to one side, checking back once in a while to make sure that you are continuing in the correct general direction, and looking where the animal will probably be. Animals watch their back trail. Moose, for one, zigzag a bit, then circle back into the wind before lying down. Of course, with the wind blowing directly from you to them. Any will get you out far in advance of your arrival. Tracking an animal on ground free of snow is almost always unprofitable, not because it is impossible, but because it usually takes too much time. The tracks may be perfectly distinct for a short or long distance on the bare earth. Then the animal comes to a train covered with leaves, grass, or moss, where you have to search minutely and slowly for each telltale indication of its passage. Nevertheless, there are times when this must be done, as when you are following a wounded animal. If you get a shot, say at a deer, and feel quite confident you hit it in the boiler room, even though it ran off out of sight, be sure to note the direction in which it disappeared, then go to where the animal was when you shot at it and look for hair and blood. All of our hoofed animals have very brittle hair. If your bullet has connected, some of this hair will have been cut off, and you will discover it in the ground, grass, or bushes if you look closely enough. You may also find blood, although bullet wounds do not always bleed externally. If you are sure that the animal has been hit, the thing to do, unless you are in a forest jam full of other hunters, is to relax right there for half an hour before you start to follow the spoor. This is to allow the animal time to get over the worst of its scare, to bed down, and to stiffen up. Otherwise, you may drive it right out of the area and lose it to predators. In country where there are many other hunters, on the other hand, to delay following the wounded animal means running the risk of having another licensed individual come on it and tag it as his own. It may be, too, that approaching darkness makes it desirable to follow the tracks at once. In any case, you have a most interesting little piece of tracking on your hands. The tracks of the animal ran off may be clearly apparent on favorable ground, or they may be just mere impressions, not more than what would be caused by pressing down with a stick. You can find these dim marks if you look closely. A leaf may be pressed down or disturbed, its damp edge turned up. Grass may be bent or bruised, dirt or sand may be thrown up a little, even a single particle adhering to a blade of grass may identify a trail. When you get 2 or more tracks in succession, measure the distance between them. This distance, marked by a broken switch, if you find the device handy, will tell you where to look ahead for an indication of the next impression. Tracking in moss is particularly difficult. There may be hundreds of holes. Look with suspicion on any that is not the correct distance ahead of the last sure print. In the early morning, a fresh trail through grass that is covered with dew or frost will show a very distinct white trace that can be seen from a distance, but this will all disappear as the vegetation dries. Conversely, when temperatures are far below zero, the frost brushed from trees and bushes by a passing animal will leave a bare, dark indication of his passage. To develop skill in identifying fresh spoor, make simple sample tracks in all kinds of country at all times of day and weather. The end of your axe handle will suffice to mark sure imprints. Examine them hourly to see how wind, time, sun, heat, and frost alter them. Animals, too, will often scrape or bruise twigs, buds, bushes, and branches as they pass. Reproduce such abrasions and fractures, and watch how they discolor and disintegrate with time. One old hunter, who has the most skilled tracker we have ever known, told us that he had been making these test marks for 20 years and was still learning from them. You cannot learn tracking merely from such suggestions as these, but they may be of some help, if only by showing you where to start. Tracking is an art learned only by long experience, aided by unusual powers of observation. Game tracks will be of the most assistance to you in the meantime by indicating a particular little locality where it will be most profitable to hunt.